When certainty is not possible, clarity becomes essential.
I don't think about anymore about what I can't do, but I think about what I can do.
You can be confident in an uncertain future. I refuse to offer you false hope. There are many things that can give you hope for a week, but all of them are fragile and they'll all fail you.
Hey everybody, it's Preston Poore. Welcome to P-Cubed. Thanks for being here today. P-Cubed is all about equipping leaders to rise to the challenge. And so we want to talk today a little bit about hope. I was inspired by this report that came out from Gallup. It's called the Global Leadership Report, What Followers Want in Their Leader. And it inspired me to bring a guest in, we'll introduce in just a minute, to talk about hope and the importance of hope. It's funny, I have heard this phrase before, maybe you have too. It says that man can live about 40 days without food, 3 days without water, about 8 minutes without air, but only 1 second without hope. And so we'll talk a little bit about hope and the faith aspect of that and also how that ties into the workplace. So excited about today. Before we get going, though, I want to tell a quick story because there's so many I could share with you today about where hope has played an incredible role in my life and the life of those around me. But this story really is in the workplace. And I think I've shared with the audience a few times before that I've been through, 11 reorgs at the Coca-Cola Company, 14, I think, in my overall career. And every time you go through that reorg, there's this sense of anxiety, this sense of despair, not knowing that decisions are being made in another room. And for one specific instance, I remember it was really before my retirement. I think it was the last restructure before I left, and I had a lot on the line. You had a pension, insurance, all those kinds of things, and then to be thrown out, you've worked 20 plus years for all this stuff. But I remember the phone call coming, and got the call, picked it up, and said, "Hey, Preston, this is Ted. I want to share with you the results of the reorg." And in that moment, I just sat back for a second. There's a few takeaways before I reveal, obviously, because I was still with the company when I retired a couple of years ago. But there's a few things that I learned. Number one, that the stakes were high. And at that moment, I started thinking about, okay, how do I let go, let control of this, and give this to the Lord and then remain hopeful in that? I had to have a perspective shift. I realized that hope wasn't just wishful thinking, it's confidence in a better future. And also we'll talk about a confidence in someone on that. And then number three, the moment of truth. When I finally got that from Ted, he called and said, "Hey, Preston, you're in, you've got the job." It was that relief, a hope fulfilled, if you will, that came on. It gave me a cheerful heart. But at the same time, there are so many other people in the workforce that have heard the news that's opposite, that, hey, you don't have a place on that anymore. You're not part of the organization. What do you do? And so I want to talk a little bit about, with our guest today, about what happens if your world is shaken from a workplace perspective or any other adversity that you encounter. Where do you place your hope? And I think it's a big deal. So let's do that. I want to bring in Grant Partrick. Grant, thanks for being here this morning. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Grant, you and I met a long time ago, and you are the location pastor for Cumberland at Passion City Church. And so we thank you for all that you're serving and all that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want you to tell folks, I guess, really a little bit about your background.
Sure.
Because the first time you and I met, I was just fascinated about your venture into a sport, right?
Yep.
What happened? I asked you a key question one day, too. I remember sitting in the coffee shop, and I said, well, how did that change your purpose? And you go, no, Preston, actually changed my identity, right? And had a shift on that. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to dive into this hope issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. It's a joy to be here. I love what you're doing with P-Cubed, and excited to get to be a part today. My name is Grant Partrick. I grew up as a tennis player, and that kind of was my whole life from a really young age. My parents have videos of me playing tennis at 2 years old, which now that I have kids, I'm like, I can't get my 2-year-old to do anything, so I don't know how I was playing tennis at 2. But it really became my whole world. My dad didn't play, my mom didn't play. I just kind of got into it and loved it, and that became my whole world from my earliest memories. And all of my kind of junior career, elementary school, was traveling the country, playing tournaments. And then I got to high school and had experienced some success and had an opportunity to go to Hilton Head Island, was recruited by an academy there to train. And so I left high school early after my junior year, left my family, left my friends, moved to Hilton Head Island, which isn't a bad place to go as a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And I was chasing my dream of playing tennis at the highest level, and was there for a little while. Ultimately played in my first kind of tournament towards moving towards the Pro Tour in qualifier tournament in Mobile, Alabama, which I'm not a huge fan of that place.
Why? Oh, you're going to tell us why here in a minute, I imagine.
And my first tournament, I hit a forehand that I'd hit hundreds of thousands of times. Something popped in my shoulder, and it began a several-year process of surgery, rehab that ultimately landed me in Dr. Andrews' office in Birmingham saying, hey, if you keep playing tennis, you're not going to be able to throw a ball with your kids when you get older. And so that was kind of it. And I realized as a 19, 20-year-old, this had been my whole identity, and it was kind of gone overnight. And so it sent me into a real dark spiral. And I moved back home. I enrolled in a school kind of down the street, a great university in Dahlonega, Georgia, where I graduated from, but kind of thought, I guess that's what normal people do. They go to school and get a degree and get a real job. So I did that, and just was in a super dark place in life. My junior year at North Georgia, I got tricked into going to a conference. I was invited to a concert with a T, and it ended up being a conference about Jesus, and I would have never gone. Sometimes Christian people do this. I would have never gone. But I went, and I kind of sat in the top row, and I'm sure on the outside I looked like I didn't want to be there, but inside I was really searching for something. I had no sense of self-worth, no identity, and heard about the gospel in a way I had never heard it before. Started me on a year-long kind of investigation journey that a year later landed me putting my faith in Jesus. And life's been crazy since then. Pretty quickly, I knew I was called into ministry and had a deep desire to invest into high school students, be a voice for them that I didn't have when I was in high school. And I just hit my 11-year mark at Passion City Church a few weeks ago. So
fantastic.
It's been a fun ride.
Yeah.
Married to an amazing woman named Maggie. We've been married for 10 years in April.
Your better half.
My better half, for sure.
Yeah, me too.
She's amazing, such a gift. We kind of met through church. We've got 3 little girls, 6, 4, and 2.
That's awesome.
So pray for me. I grew up in a house of all boys, and now I live in a house of all girls.
God's teaching you something there.
Yes, he has a sense of humor for sure.
Good. That's good.
So,
a couple things you bring. I didn't know this about you. A couple things we have in common. We both have Dr. Andrews in common.
Yes.
He operated on my knee back
No
in the
way.
day. Yeah. Carl and I lived in Birmingham for about 8 years.
Okay. Fascinating office, isn't it?
Yeah. Fascinating. And just to go in and have his attention. And it was just a bone chip. But I said, okay, I know it's just a bone chip. I'm going to see the best doctor in the entire world for that. And he took it out. But
it's pretty amazing when you're there, because you're like, I know I'm in this room, and it's likely that Tiger Woods is in the next room. And it's likely, it's amazing when you walk in there.
Impressive type stuff. Yeah. And the other thing is about the shoulder. It's interesting, and I hope you never go there. My shoulder, I had thrown out of joint so many times, either playing tennis or throwing a football. When I was a kid, I used to just be able to wing the football down the field.
Yep.
And so I was the kid they always picked to play quarterback just because I could do that. But I threw it out so many times that I got osteoarthritis, and I had a full shoulder replacement.
No way.
In 2017, yeah. So I'd show you right now the audience, but I've got this huge scar all the way down here in Atlanta. So I know the shoulder pain. I know what it can do.
Yeah.
And what it does, though, is, and this may play into a little bit of our conversation, I was telling somebody the other day about they asked me, well, how do you feel about not being able to throw the ball or play tennis anymore, those kinds of things? And I said, okay, well, I don't think about anymore about what I can't do, but I think about what I can do. And the other thing is that with my kids, because my son played quarterback in high school and other stuff, I learned to throw with my left arm, right? It's because I want to have that joy with them out there. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
I can't even brush my teeth with my left hand.
Yeah, I know.
So
it's ambidextrous and that whole thing. So
one of the cool things that was happening, I'll just say this. Yeah. I got to go back years later to Mobile, and I was there preaching at a youth conference, and I hadn't been since I got hurt. And I remember I drove out to the tennis center before the session that night, went out to court 43, which is where I got hurt. And this is 10 years after I got hurt. Yeah. And I remember sitting there, and it was the first time I really thought, if there's moments in life where there's closed door after closed door after closed door, and you don't understand them. Yeah. But there is a moment in life where you show up and you go, oh, all the closed doors make sense. And if that door hadn't closed, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And it was such a cool moment, just the full circle, to stand there on the court and go, if I could have chosen to have success in tennis or to do this, I would choose this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so it was really cool. And maybe somebody, you've got some closed doors. I just encourage you, there is a day where not only they'll make sense, but where you'll be grateful for them. So
yeah, that's so true. I often use the phrase, I look backwards to be able to see forwards.
Yeah, that's good.
So I can see all of the things that brought me to this point, and then I can look forward to have that faith and trust that things are going to work out different than I thought, probably, right?
Yep.
But they're in God's hands.
That's great.
That's great. Good
great
stuff. Hey, I want to turn to this. So I mentioned earlier, one of the things that inspired me about having you in here today was to talk about this idea around hope. And so I want to talk about what hope is, why it's so important. Again, inspired by this Gallup study that came out. It's really not sharing anything new, right? Because over the ages, it's been so important for leaders to instill hope on that. So with Gallup's research, what they found, hope is the most important thing that followers are looking for in their leader. Now, think about the different things on that. It's amazing what they thought. That hope was number one by 6%. The next thing on the list, Grant, was trust, and that was 33%. And then compassion and stability came below that.
Yeah.
It's this idea that there's a brighter future. Now, it's funny. I was at the New Canaan Society retreat in Orlando this weekend, and I was sitting next to this big tech executive and chatting a little bit. And he asked me what I was doing. I said, well, I'm going to actually soon, I'm doing a workshop for a company called Office Pride in April, and they want me to come in and talk about hope and why it's so important. And I said to him, well, do you think hope is important in leadership and in the workplace? He goes, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? It's the most important thing.
Wow.
You have to be able to convey hope. And so I'm sitting back thinking, okay, well, hope's this frilly little thing that you do out there. And the other thing, too, as we talk about this, is that I always hear that hope is not a strategy. But clearly, if Gallup says that it's the most important thing that followers are looking for in their leader, it's got to be something. It's got to be a strategy, right? So tell me a little bit about that. Why do you think hope is so important from your perspective in leadership?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it was so fascinating when this was published because, we had been in this collection, this series of talks at Passion City Church on hope, and we got through the first week, and I had multiple people sending me this. Yeah. And it just, I think, was really resounding at the turn of a new year. I think everybody's trying to decide, should I get my hopes up this year or not? Should I, is this year going to be any better? I hoped last year that this year was going to be better, and it wasn't. And so I think people were processing that. And it was fascinating when this was published. And even their definition of hope in the article says the need to feel positive about the future and for leaders to provide a clear direction. It made me think of Proverbs. I think it's 29:18. It says, where there is no vision, the people perish.
That's right.
And I think that's true. I think that for young people, for people in the workplace, for people in every aspect of life, there is an uncertainty currently in our world that feels, maybe it's because of how much we're in front of screens, maybe it's because of the quickness of the news cycle, but there feels to be more uncertainty than there ever has been. And I think for young people, they're looking at that and going, I don't know, how do I have any confidence for the future of my life? Right. And so I think for leaders to be able to provide hope, to cast vision, clear vision, to say this is where we're going, I think is imperative for everybody, not just for young people, but it is interesting in the article that for young people especially, it's really, really important. So I think people crave it. I don't think it's just an emotional need. I think the world is kind of waking up to that. I think this thing from Gallup helps us, and even the business leader you're talking about. Forever, it's kind of seemed like it was an emotional thing. Right. But I think everybody's understanding, no, we are, as human beings, we are hardwired for hope. We have to have hope, or we will perish. And so I think leaders are wise to think about how is my leadership providing the people who are under my care? Am I providing a hopeful future for them? So I think it's critical.
From your a little bit off script here, but from your purview, from your perspective, have you seen organizations where that lacked vision or lost the vision, and kind of what happened? Because that is tied all into hope, right? And painting a picture of a better future. Can you think of an example? And I'm not looking for names.
Sure.
But based on, I know, your exposure and what you have and all the people you talk to and stuff like that, have you seen that at all in the results of that, where there is this despair, this lack of hope? What is that like? Yeah,
I think I certainly have seen it. I've probably been guilty of it. I mean, I think, to constantly have vision is difficult, as a leader. And I think there are seasons where, particularly if you don't surround yourself with people and you're allowing them to contribute to the vision and stoke the fire of the vision. But everybody wants to live life on mission. Everybody wants to have a hill they're trying to climb, some cause we're trying to move forward. People are not interested anymore in signing up for a job just to get a paycheck. People want their work to matter, and that's great. And so I think what I have realized happens is where the vision wanes, when people no longer understand where we're going, or maybe there was a vision and there was a big push and we got there, and there's a celebratory moment. We did it. Yeah. What you'll notice is more people will quit in the months following that than they did in the months before that, even though the workload was significantly harder before. Yeah. And the reason why is because they understood this is where we're going. This is who we're going with. This is how it's going to impact people. This is why it's meaningful. And they had such clarity and alignment on the vision that they were able to endure long work hours, hard work for the sake of the cause. And then I think in the seasons where it feels like, hey, where are we going? What are we trying to do? What mountain or what hill are we trying to climb? What's our goal? How do we win? I think those are the seasons where it feels like there's a restlessness in people. Yeah, right. And so I think that's where, when there is no hope, when there is no vision about where we're going, that tomorrow is going to be better today. When people feel like they're living in a space where yesterday was always the heyday, it's very hard to move towards the future. Yeah. I remember being a 20-something-year-old. I was a tennis coach at the time. I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. And everywhere I was introduced, I was 26 years old. Everywhere I was introduced at my company was, this is Grant. He used to whatever. And I was like, I'm 26 years old. I can't be a has-been already. Yeah, right. But it does something in your heart. If you're always trying to go backwards, it does something in your heart. So why hope is crucial is it puts fuel in our tank. Sure does. To go, let's keep going. So I think that's why it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a couple things you call out there, that hope is not subjective. I've read a lot of the Stoic stuff around hope, and they say it's kind of a manufactured feeling over time. And I would think maybe that's a little bit more about optimism than it is hope, right? This rosy outlook that you can paint for yourself. But hope is also objective, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. But we've got to be able to share with our teams, bring them along. And the thing I'm also learning in my life, Grant, is that leadership's job is to always think about what's next. Because if you run into, you've lost your vision or your vision's been accomplished, and you don't understand what that next chess move is or that thing long term, you won't sustain your organization or team that you're working with. But if you do, on the other hand, and continue to paint that vision, refresh it, think about the mission you're doing, you'll continue down the path or continue climbing mountains and all that. So
that's great.
So important.
One of the things I've learned just early on in my leadership journey is that it is as important, if not more important, to not just think about the vision, but to think about how to communicate the vision.
Oh, so good. Tell me more.
So the vision is important. Leaders, I think a lot of times you can sit in your office, you got your iPad out, you got your whiteboard going, you're going, this is where we're going, this is how we're going to get there, this is the hill this is our goal. Yeah. But you haven't thought about the fact that everybody else that you need to buy into that vision is not sitting in your office looking at your whiteboard.
That's right.
And you think so much about the chess pieces, the strategy of how we're going to move forward. But what you haven't thought about is, how do I bring everybody else into why this is important and why we're going to go this way? And so I just personally, just in my leadership journey, have realized I've come out before of my office so excited about, man, I feel like this is where we're going to go. Yeah. This is the Lord's way telling us we're going to go here. And my team's looking at me like, we don't know what you're talking about. We're not as excited about this as you. And I realized I spent all my time creating the vision. I didn't spend any time thinking about how to communicate the vision. Yeah. And it's really important if you want people to go along.
So what did you learn in that? How do you enlist other people into a shared vision, is what they would call it?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I learned is if you want people to buy in, you have to allow them to weigh in. And so
say that again.
If you want people to buy in, you have to allow them to weigh in.
Very good. Awesome.
So if you want people to buy into the vision, then you don't just shoot them a memo and say, this is the vision. You invite them into it. And it doesn't mean that it's, totally wet cement and we're going to go wherever everybody says we're going to go. But it does, even as a leader working on other projects where leaders invite me in, hey, what do you think about this? Yes. Hey, we're thinking about we're seeing a big need here. We're thinking about shifting this, that, or the other. Even if they don't go with my idea, just the fact that I was invited into the conversation gives me buy-in. Yeah. And so that's one of the things I've really learned is whenever I'm trying to make a big change, a directional change or shift, to make sure that my key leaders have had the chance to weigh into that decision so that they will buy into it when we communicate it. So that when we communicate it to the team, it's not just me communicating it, but it's me plus a whole leadership team of people that are already in.
And they can act as ambassadors,
That's right.
for the vision. So it's not just you, it's everybody else is gathering around you on that. Two points I'll call out too. It's interesting being a student of John Maxwell.
Yes.
He says that they have to buy into the leader before they buy into the vision.
That's
so
great.
Think about that. So the leader's got to have that integrity.
Yes.
Be the one that actually is full of hope, that is real. That has that vision, and you can trust them on that. So that's a real key component. And the other part is that I love is you pull not only asking for feedback, and you have those ambassadors working on the hope part, on the vision part, is that everybody's favorite radio station, if we still listen to radio stations, WIIFM, what's in it for me, right? And so you have to paint the picture where you can help them see how they're succeeding and how they're winning, how they're flourishing in the vision, and how they're contributing to it. Because if you don't do that, then people are going to be more resistant to come along on that. And so it's not about manipulating people, but it's really trying to help people see how they fit in, how they contribute.
That's great.
Or contribute to what you're doing and forming the vision. Yeah. And the phrase that the Leadership Challenge, it's a book Jim Kouzes and Gary Posner wrote, talk about shared vision. Yeah. How do you actually enlist people into that? And exactly what you just said is you ask for that feedback.
That's great.
And you paint that picture for them. So
that's great.
So important.
Say the Maxwell quote one more time.
People buy into the leader before they buy into the vision.
Yeah, that's so good.
Think about that.
I think even in the conversation of this Gallup thing, one of the things that I realized was there are categories. They're saying hope is the number one thing, trust is the second thing. But I've realized that where there is no trust, there oftentimes is no hope.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things we were saying in our collection of talks is that, trust is the root and hope is the fruit. And if you trust a leader, then when he communicates a future vision, you go, I not only do I believe in the vision, I believe in him. Yeah. And I think that's really important. Those two things are kind of inseparably linked, Yeah.
So let's kind of transition just a little bit to the this source of hope. Yeah. Right. And I want you to talk a little bit about this collection of talks, and specifically, and I think you mentioned it in your message, you should get your hopes up. Should, right?
Yes.
Because we hear the phrase, you shouldn't get your hopes up, right? Great play on that. You talked about how disappointment can make us hesitant to hope again. So my question to you is, how can leaders and individuals push past that fear?
That's great. I think everybody knows what it's like to be discouraged. I mean, think about, even in my own life, how many times you think to yourself, I don't know, I kind of got burned last time. Should I give this another go? I used the example of when my wife and I were looking for our first house, and nobody tells you how hard that's going to be. When we finally got in the first one, and it's, looks like Chip and Joanna were in the driveway and had just left. There's shiplap on every wall, and it just is amazing. And my wife and I stood in the driveway, and we were like, this is it. We're going to get this house. And, some builder bought it for all cash for $400,000 more than we were offering. And you're like, who has $400,000 over asking to buy this house? And that happened the first house, and then it happened the second house, and then it happened another house, and then it happened another house. And what I noticed is we would go into houses that we liked, but we wouldn't be excited about them. And it's because we just assumed we're probably not going to get it. And it's one thing to talk about it, in house shopping, but I think a lot of people live that way in life. It could, you're in an environment that could produce a great outcome for you, but because you've experienced so much disappointment, you almost just anticipate and expect that it's not going to work out for your good. Yeah, right. And I really wanted to try to help people see that we're not meant to live that way, And I think one of the crucial things is, and I don't remember who said this, but somewhere along the way I heard this said, is our understanding of failure. Failure is an event, not an identity.
That's right. It's not who you are.
It's not who you are. And so when you fail at something, which you will, or you've never tried anything. Those are your two categories. You either have experienced failure or you've never tried anything. But when we experience failure, you can either learn from it or you can be defined by it. Yeah, right. And if you get defined by it, your hope will wane, and all of a sudden, even though great opportunities lie in front of you, you'll think, it's probably not going to work out good. But if you can understand that failure is not is an event and not an identity, it's something that happened, it's not who you are, and you learn from it, then as other opportunities come, you realize, okay, I'm now standing on all of these things that I've learned, and so I should have my hopes up that tomorrow is going to be better than today. Yeah. So I think those are those are ways to navigate. How do I resist the discouragement and get my hopes up again?
Yeah, that's so true. It's funny. So you mentioned that my son Benton and his wife Emma, my daughter-in-law, are going through that house hunting thing right now.
It's so tough.
They were turned down on the first house. They just got a offer accepted, and so they're going to go through the due diligence. But it's that hope of, when you go through and then you try to adjust and you fail. And I use the phrase, I love you said this about identity versus in the failure piece. I say that you're not defined by your failures, but you are refined by that.
That's good.
And so if you look at it from that perspective, that will give you hope.
That's right.
Right? Because you're going to try to figure out, okay, what did I do differently? How do I learn from that and then improve? And that's what you do as you go along, like even in the housing piece when you're seeking a home and you're finding the right one. The other thing comes to mind is kind of funny is I often get ahead of God on a lot of stuff. And even in my dating life, my dad and I used to laugh about the great poet Garth Brooks. And Garth Brooks wrote that song, Thank God for Unanswered Prayers.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so to your point, when you stood on that tennis court 10 years later, you had maybe a hope that you would do a certain thing.
That's right.
Your prayers went along the way on that. But when you were standing on that court, you realized that, hey, it wasn't that my hope was misplaced, but God worked all of those things for his glory and our good in that. And that's what we can be hopeful about, right?
Absolutely.
On that. So good.
Absolutely. That's
so
great.
Good. I want to ask you about the source of hope. And this is really for those that are of faith. And I would encourage the people that are listening right now, as Grant and I talk a little bit about this, have an open mind about it. Explore these thoughts and see if they're worthy of considering. And those who are of the faith, I'd really love for you to hear what Grant shares today. And here's the question. I thought this was great. And I'm not trying to be provocative, but for the audience perspective, I thought maybe you could share a little bit on this. You said that God is the only true source of hope. That's a pretty bold statement, right? And what does it mean practically for someone leading in the workplace, in the ministry, or even at home?
Well, I think that the way that I think that's a true statement. It's a big statement. I think it's a true statement, and I think it's not only true because I read it somewhere. It's true because I've lived it.
Good.
Everything and everyone that I have ever placed my hope in outside of Jesus has let me down, including myself. We are changing. And I often say to people, I remember, I will share with people sometimes. I remember being in like 6th grade or something like that, and I think I was dating. I had my first girlfriend, and I remember praying to God, like, if you'll just let this girl say yes to being my girlfriend, I'll do whatever you want.
That's right.
I'll move to Africa. I'll do anything.
The negotiation
Lord.
going on, right?
And she said yes. So praise God for that. And it lasted, I think, 3 days, and then she broke up with me at recess, and it just was, how quickly we change our minds and what we want. We're constantly changing. And the scripture says that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so if you want your hope to be anchored, if you want it to be unwavering, then it has to be placed in something unchanging.
Right.
And there's only one thing, only one person who is unchanging. The key verse for this in our collection was Romans 15:13, and it says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit."
Amen.
And I know we don't want a grammar class here and nobody cares about the Greek, but the first few words of that verse say the God of hope. And that word there is a genitive of product. So it doesn't mean the God of hope in terms of God has hope, not like he is the hopeful God. He doesn't need to hope for anything. He's omniscient. He knows everything already. Right. So what does it mean? Well, when you have a genitive of product, what they taught me in school was you replace it with which produces. So God, which produces, who produces hope. He is the source of hope. So that is why I believe, one, I've tested and seen that he's the only true place that I can anchor my hope in that will hold up and be steady and firm and secure. But two, the scriptures tell us that he is the God of hope. He is the source and he is the supplier.
So so that being the source, how does an individual of faith, I guess really lack of a better phrase, tap into that?
Yeah, that's great. I think it goes back to what we were talking about, those two words, why I asked you about the Maxwell quote. We choose what we trust in. That's a decision we make. And so trust and hope are inextricably linked. You can't really separate them. What we trust in, we hope for. And the story of humanity is the story of trusting in lesser things.
Yeah.
And the reason why many people are hopeless, and many people are, I was, recently reading this report from the CDC that came out in 2023 that was saying, I think the number was 40% of American teenagers reported persistent feelings of sadness, loneliness, and hopelessness.
Wow.
40%.
Yeah, let that sink in. That's tough.
That's a big number.
It is big.
Of
Huge.
our young people. And I kind of realized as I was working on the message for that week, a lot of people are hopeless because they have hoped in less, including me.
Yeah.
When I have arrived in seasons of hopelessness, it's because I've anchored my identity and my trust to something that is shifting and changing and fragile, like the game of tennis or many other things that I've put my trust in. And so, we read the psalmist who writes, some trust in chariots and some trust in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God.
Right.
And so for us, we do that. We trust in all kinds of things. So how do you tap into the source of hope? You trust in him.
Yep.
And that means you rest in him.
Yeah.
That means you put your confidence in him. Like when you ever sat in a chair, you weren't sure if you could trust in or not. And you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I can. Yeah. I'm not sure if this thing can hold me. I did. I went right through my sister-in-law's chair out back on her deck. And I'm not even a big guy, but I knew when I was looking at the chair, it'd been rained on a lot. And I was like, this chair is going down. And sure enough, I sat on it and the legs broke and I hit the deck. But it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. Yeah. If you think something is sturdy, you'll lean on it and you'll trust on it. And so that's how we tap into this source of hope.
Yeah, that's so good. Speak to somebody that may be in that despair right now. I think Pastor Louis, when he spoke, he one of them during the series talked about somebody that may be experiencing despair and even had considered taking their life. Right. Yeah. And ending it all, saying, hey, I have no hope and this is it. I'm going to do it. What would you say to somebody that might be listening that is experiencing that despair in this moment? How would you counsel them in this moment?
Yeah, I think oftentimes what happens in despair is, and everybody I think arrives there. I mean, when you read through the scriptures, you realize life is hard and we should kind of expect that. Yeah. We're told that life will be hard. I always think back to Jeremiah, who was known as the weeping prophet. Yeah. And he writes in in Lamentations chapter 3, this amazing verse comes from Lamentations chapter 3. It's on bumper stickers. It's an amazing verse. And it says that there are new mercies every morning. Isn't that an awesome verse?
Yeah.
But the context around the verse, like a few verses before that, the first 20 verses of that chapter are Jeremiah talking about the brutality of life. One verse, he actually says, it's as if my teeth have been ground into gravel. Yeah. And you're like, man, this is tough.
Yeah.
And then, but look what he says. And when he changes in the verse, he says, but this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies are new every morning. So you realize when you understand the context of the promise, it doesn't get worse, it gets better, because you realize, man, life was tough for Jeremiah and life is tough for me. And when you understand I think the waterfall of the love and grace of God, you realize that to a hopeful future, saying things like the best is ahead, is not like a cheesy bumper sticker answer. It's actually good, gritty theology.
Yeah, right.
That we have a promise that everything's going to be made right. We think about the text in Revelation a lot of times where it says, he will wipe away every tear. Isn't that an amazing verse? One, it means that there are tears, so it's okay. There's going to be grieving, and I think it's okay for there to be grieving. But two, to know that for those of us who have tapped into the source by trusting in God, there is a day coming when all the wrongs will be made right, whereas one theologian said, where all the sad things will come untrue, and where God himself will wipe every tear from our eyes.
So good.
So we can have hope.
So good. And it's interesting. I heard somebody say one time that one of the verses says the three things, the greatest things are faith, joy, and love. Is that right? Oh, no.
Faith, hope, and love.
And the only one that we won't have or need when we get to heaven is hope.
Yeah.
Because it will be hope fulfilled.
Amazing.
Right? And the scripture in Romans, I believe it also says that those who believe in the Lord will not be disappointed.
That's right.
And so that's our hope.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
if you're listening today, Grant and I would both point you to that source of hope.
Yeah.
As you do all that.
Absolutely.
Let's bring it up just a little bit real quick. I want
Great.
to kind of just notch it up and talk, and this may not, it's not that much further up, but I want to talk about uncertainty real quick. You know, you alluded to this. 2025 is bringing new challenges for people, right?
Sure.
A lot of uncertainty. How can leaders cultivate a hope that endures through uncertainty, change, and setbacks? What's a little bit, maybe something different that we haven't mentioned so far that leaders that are listening to this could lean into and take as some advice?
Yeah. I think that's great. One of the things I've heard said, and I don't know who said it, just know it was someone smarter than me, is when certainty is not possible, clarity becomes essential. Don't you like that?
That is.
So
Good.
I don't know for sure how this is going to work out, but I'm going to communicate clearly, with clarity, where we are in the process the whole way.
Yep.
And I think that's important. No leader can stand up anywhere right now and say with confidence, this is how the rest of this year is going to go. This is what the markets are going to do. This is how this is going to work. Nobody knows. So we cannot really truly communicate. We can communicate confidence and this is where we want to go, but we don't have certainty about what the next few months are going to look like. We haven't had certainty we never had certainty, but we're just more aware of the lack of certainty we have now. Yeah. I think for leaders, the way you lead in this world is you lead with communication and you lead with clarity.
Yeah, that's so good.
And it helps people.
It does. And I think one of the leader's main responsibilities is to define reality.
That's right.
And so it's not just this rosy vision that we have trying to instill some type of false hope.
That's right.
Optimism, if you will, but it's painting that picture. But then if we work together to achieve this, that we're going to continue to go toward the vision and the mission. That's right. On that. So it's so important.
I've actually found for me, and I'm a millennial, so I think this is my generation.
Yeah, sure.
I would way rather follow a leader who's honest and transparent about the lack of certainty we have, but still communicating hope for a better future.
Yes.
Than a leader that is standing up and going, hey, our vision hasn't changed, nothing's changed, we're going this way, and everything's great.
Right.
But everything's not great. Things are on fire.
Right.
The world's on fire. Right. And so I think there is a way for a leader to communicate with humility, yet with confidence and clarity. Hey, there's a lot of things we don't know. We don't know how the next few months are going to go. But one thing we do know is we believe in our mission. Yeah. We believe in how we're helping people. This company is helping people. And we're going to keep doing what we feel like we've been called to do. And I think people want to follow that kind of leader.
They do.
And hope actually, I think in that sense, comes more, back to the Maxwell quote, comes more from trusting the leader than even necessarily the outcome. Yeah. So I think leaders can harness that.
Yeah.
And lead with transparency, lead with honesty, lead with vulnerability. And that's not the opposite of leading with confidence. Mm-hmm. They can go together.
They can, absolutely.
You can be confident in an uncertain future.
You can be. I always found it interesting at the Coca-Cola Company, the leaders that I worked with and for, the ones that painted that picture of hope, of vision, that took an interest in me, showed me how I fit into everything. They were the ones that I was willing to run through walls for. Yeah. And so it wasn't necessarily, to your point, it wasn't the result or outcome. It's because of who they were and how they inspired me and how they believed in me. It's like, man, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to lean in and you're going to win, right? Mm-hmm. Or if we don't do well, we're going to learn from it. We're going to continue to move forward.
That's right.
On it. So powerful.
That's
so
great.
Good. Hey, let's move to what I call Block C real quick here, and just the end. These are meant to be some quick, pithy questions that maybe our listeners might be interested in. We'll just kind of answer them together, if you will. On it and not go down too long of a conversation, but hope is we just wrap things up here. So the first question really is about the biggest leadership mistakes in offering hope. And so I'm just curious to know your thoughts on this. From your experience, what's the biggest mistake leaders make when trying to provide hope to those that they lead?
I would say the biggest mistake that leaders make is they solve problems that the team isn't facing.
Huh? Tell me more.
So if when you're trying to instill hope, basically I think it boils down to this. If you speak before you listen, meaning if you're the leader and you're detached from your people and you are trying to provide them with hope, but you don't understand the challenges that you're facing, you will provide solutions to problems they don't have, and they won't be hopeful.
Yeah, so good. Great answer. Hey, let's move to this next one. This is about advice for millennial leaders on hope. Millennials are stepping into leadership roles and facing unique challenges. What's one piece of advice you'd give them about leading with hope?
I heard somebody say this one time. They say leadership is leadership is only lonely at the top if you choose to climb alone.
So true.
And I love that quote.
Yeah.
I've always remembered that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that millennial leaders in particular can do is to ensure that they have a community of other leaders that are helping them see their blind spots. Mm-hmm. We would be foolish for us as millennials, speaking as a millennial, to assume that we know all the answers to all the problems. And so I think it's hard to learn anything if you already know everything. Mm-hmm. And the more we're connected to a community of other leaders that can help us see our blind spots, the more we'll be able to help lead our teams in a positive direction.
Yeah, it's that sense of encouragement, others building you up, you pouring into other people as well. The sense of accountability, right?
100%.
Because if you go to the top by yourself and then you're starting to make all kinds of decisions, that's where a lot of that pride steps in. And
100%.
People are going to lose hope, if you will, in the leader. And that comes back to they buy into the leader.
For sure.
And then the vision.
For sure.
As you tie all that, certainly. And then let's wind up with this last question. I'm going to ask and see if there's anything else you want to chat about or mention that we haven't covered real quick on that. So for listeners who want to be a source of hope in their workplace, home, or community, what's one practical step that they can take this week after listening to this podcast? What's one thing that you say that they should do?
I would say, I'm a pastor, and I'm saying very clearly that I believe that the only true source of hope is God, a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so I would say you cannot be a source, you cannot extend what you don't possess. Yeah. So you cannot give hope if you don't have hope.
That's right.
You cannot give light if you don't have light. Right. And so I would really encourage people, leaders particular, or anybody listening, especially if you feel hopeless, to get in the pages of a Bible, to talk to some friends that you know who are people of faith, to ask them about the hope that they have. And for us as believers, we should be living lives, as Peter says, that everybody else would go, tell me why you have this hope. Yeah. We should be ready to give a defense for the reason of the hope that we have. So I would just encourage you to investigate that. Yeah. And I really believe, I'm saying this as someone, I put my faith in Jesus later on in college, and was in a very dark road before that. And I have put my faith and my trust and my hope in all kinds of things that have let me down. And so I'm just telling you, I refuse to offer you false hope. There are many things that can give you hope for a week, give you hope for a month, give you hope for a paycheck for 2 weeks. There are lots of things that can give you hope for short term, but all of them are fragile and they'll all fail you. And so I really believe if you want to experience hope, gritty, true, unshakable, unbreakable hope, it's only found in a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah, such a good word. Thank you for sharing that with the audience. I appreciate that. Anything else on your mind as we talk through all that? You may say no, that's fine, but I know that both of us sitting here thinking through things, we have tangential thoughts. Is there anything that I missed that you may wanted to share this morning?
No, I would be curious for you. We were in very different career fields with the same heartbeat, same mission, obviously. For you, coming from, obviously we have lots of business leaders in our church, and I'm trying to shepherd and lead a lot of business leaders. From the business side of things, tell me maybe how do you see best for a faith leader to supply their people with hope? Kind of people go, yeah, we kind of get how that works and why that's essential. For you in the business community, which was so encouraging about this Gallup poll, is that this is really written for business leaders. Yeah. So how have you seen that progression or model in a good way for younger leaders that are in that context?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and let me build on this, not to pull out of the report again, but I think that's where I saw this in the transition and transformation in my career, where I was able to help other people with this. And that's, as believers, the source of hope working in me and through me. Yep. And this is how it showed up at work. And this is what Gallup says. This is what they said hope looks like, right? The attributes of it. Inspiration. Yep. Vision. Personal integrity. Growth, learning, development, and achievement. The reason they say that is because you're helping that other individual grow into their potential. Financial growth, support, independence, helping them achieve the goals that they want to. And I tell you, Grant, when I was, I guess, midway through my 20-plus year career at Coke, and it's well documented about the transformation that happened in my life because the Lord used the Coke experience I had as a sanctification and a turning back to Him and turning my career back over to Him in 2005. But it was this change in the way that I viewed people, and I would engage people and try to believe in them and paint vision. I've been part of groups and teams there at Coke where they didn't have a vision. So I'd step in and say, wait a sec, okay, how do we put a vision together? And I did exactly what you mentioned. I remember when I moved from Knoxville to Atlanta and working with CCR, which was Coca-Cola Refreshments at the time. We had a new group, and there was a lot of backfighting going on. There was just a bad culture. And I remember going to my manager and saying, hey, have you ever thought about putting a vision together? Do you know where we're headed? He said, well, I'm really not that good at that stuff. Could you help me? And what I ended up doing was I talked to everybody on the team for one-on-ones to get a sense about what they were hoping for the future, right? To get that shared vision piece on it. And I asked them about that. And the fun thing was, Grant, that as we went through that, we did a grand reveal after talking to a couple people in the group about, hey, make them ambassadors, right? Where you stand on it. And we shared it with everybody. And I'll never forget, I got comments and emails said people had hair standing up. They're getting goosebumps and stuff like that. I had a lady tell me that she started crying when she heard the vision. It's not because what I did, but it's because we enlisted and worked with the team and said, okay, here's what you see, here's what we see, and how we can be great together.
Yeah, great.
And so I think as a leader, that's one thing I learned, that if we can get ourselves into a place of influence or just leadership, where we either, because I wasn't the VP at the time, right? I wasn't the person that was calling all the shots, but I went in to offer to help. That's how you can extend your influence.
That's
if there's
great.
a lack of vision, a lack of hope, and people started having hope and saying, here's what we can do together.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. That's really encouraging to hear.
Yeah,
it's a great answer.
So good, yeah. So I think that's so important because a lot of times, Grant, and that's why I'm working so hard on this. And there's other voices thinking about this.
Yeah.
But how do we take the secular, that's where we spend 90,000 hours of our lives at work, and take our faith. And I used to say, how do we integrate our faith into the workplace? I had a friend, Paul Mahowski, who is a Harvard lawyer, and he lives up in Connecticut. And he said, Preston, what if you looked at it the other way? What if we figured out how to take our work and integrate it into our faith, right?
That's great.
And so it's how you look at things, flipping that script, as I know Pastor Louis likes to say every once in a while, right? And taking a different look at it. And so that's really what happened in my life and during my career. And
that's awesome.
I don't know if I painted hope for people, but hopefully those that might be listening today that worked with me and through that were on my teams or I worked with saw that transformation and it made a difference in their lives.
That's great. One of the things that just reminding me that I feel like I've learned that everybody can do. So if you're a young leader, if you're 28 or you're 32 and you're early on in your leadership journey or in a career, one of the things that I've learned is that intentionality is not a gift that a few people have. It is a choice that a few people are willing to make.
Yeah, that's right.
And so even what you're saying there of going to hear from everybody else, everybody can do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a special gifting to be able to go listen to other people. And the other thing I've realized is most of the time when my team comes to me, they don't need me to solve their problems.
That's right.
They just need me to listen.
Yeah.
And so much, I think, of us being able to provide hope for people is creating a space for them to be heard, to listen to them, and it helps us make better decisions.
It does.
So that's awesome. Thanks for modeling that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Still got a long way to go, but I appreciate that. And I appreciate you. Thank you for being here today. I know your schedule is really busy and things like that, but I think your message around hope and who you are too, because you're right, you're a leader that people can work with and follow on that. And I appreciate what you're doing. And I want to tell everybody that's listening today to PCube, thank you for listening today. If you would do me a favor, would you subscribe to our podcast or maybe even comment, like, share, all those types of things? And you can follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. And here's why. It's not because I want more likes. It's not because I'm trying to build a platform. It's because we're having inspirational conversations like Grant and I just had that will help others, will help them grow in their faith, will help them grow in their workplace, in their leadership, the way that they're influencing the world around them. And it can make such a big difference. So thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in today. Take care and talk soon.